simply rotting because it hasn't got a head, so the moisture's accumulated in these leaflets that are there, and that's why it's going rotten. And is anyone else in the audience growing moderate? No. Okay, so hoping for the big
What's the difficulty that all pioneers suffer from?
I mean, it may not be fundamentally anything wrong with that variety. It may just be that it's a bit more susceptible to minding about something which isn't absolutely perfect.
And can I please don't get rid of it? It does stink. Give it the crisp. Yeah, put it along.
Happy early Easter. Give it Roger.
There we are. Thank you. Okay, I'll give it back to you.
There's nothing more frustrating than looking at the plant, knowing that it should be performing, but it's just holding itself back. And I think that the prolonged period of cold did cause a certain amount of shock. And it's very true of evergreens, that they do take a long time to recover from any shock. Cold, transplant, taking cuttings, etc. You know, it all causes a certain amount of stress for them. And so the thing to do is to try and ameliorate the conditions. Make sure that your plant is kept reasonably well watered, well sheltered, pamper it, and think positive thoughts about it. And if you're going to prune, if you're going to carry any more pruning, do wait until the plant is growing before you do so. It may be necessary to reduce the size of the caliber to try and encourage it to grow out of itself, because with any plant it's about this root shoot relationship. The more root it's got, the smaller amount of root, the more likely it is to bounce back. So if it's struggling with the existing plant, maybe trim the canopy back, even if it's a case of...
That's exactly what I was doing, and I did it in May, and I've done it before, but likely it's got very, very large.
Do you think it would have been too...
And I was quite severe, and I thought it took all the summer to recover and grow new growth. Never grew. Nothing has happened. Yes, right. It's quite a big container. The thing is, containers are trickier in bad weather than open ground, because the roots raised above the soil level, they're not insulated anything like as well, and the sort of damage that Chris was talking about happening on his is far more likely on a bay in a container than a bay in open ground.
So this could
a bit of replacement root growth.
You also need to keep those containers really wet as well, because if you had carried out heavy pruning last spring and then not kept the container sufficiently damp during the summer, even though it wants to try and grow out of itself, it can't because there's insufficient moisture in the container. Of course,
right.
That's even worse than the ground.
But don't pull the plug just yet.
Definitely don't.
Thank you very much. Onwards.
Good afternoon, Julian Grano from a nearby village. I have a long path covered in lime tree wood chip, which over the years has completely broken down.
I would prefer, if I've got it, I would stack it up in alternating layers with some mutton salt, possibly giving it some dressing in garden lime, and probably some bloodfish and bone as well. And make sure that I've actually
quite a good vigorous space there. You probably will find that you need to take the newer stems along one direction of the wall while you've got the older fruiting ones going the other way, and that divides them up. Or sometimes people have the more mature fruiting stems on top in the summer, and then they have the young growth that's going to flower and fruit the next year underneath, so they're separated from the game, which just makes it a bit easier.
A little bit tidier. I mean, it's obviously sort of been overshadowed by this bay and sort of maybe even pushed out of shape by the bay.
Well, I think the first thing to look at when you do any kind of pruning, not just fruit trees but anything, is to look for some of the key rules of pruning. And that really is the removal of damaged, diseased or dead wood, the 3 Ds. And in this instance, there's quite a bit of diseased wood here. We've got these quite deep lesions on these 2 stems here, really quite deep. And then working around it, that's a decent branch there. Got plenty of decent branches higher.
Had an anxious weekend before hearing that they'd won their appeal. but a 16-page, fully reasoned decision in 2 working days is still pretty good going. Edward Proctor is Executive Director of Sport Resolutions, which organised that arbitration. He's naturally proud of the services offered by his panel.
Absolutely. I mean, the important thing that we offer, as well as cost and speed, is also independence, but also many advantages in the decisions handed down by sport resolutions are final and binding, and you don't have the multiple types of appeal that you would have in the public system.
Is it your view that sport is different from other areas of dispute and that it should be settled in its own way?
I believe that's the case, yes, because sport has its own competitive seasons and timescales that need to be adhered to, so disputes need to be resolved very quickly. The technical issues to do with the rules in sport, to do with selection, to do with anti-doping, require expert judges to be involved in their adjudication.
One of the most successful footballers to take on his sports governing body was Jean-Marc Bosman, a Belgian who wanted to move to a French club when his contract expired in 1990. The French side refused to pay a transfer fee demanded by the Belgian club, so the Belgian side refused to let Bosman go. The footballer then complained to the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg, which decided in 1995 that the transfer rules amounted to an unlawful restriction on the free movement of workers within the European Union. Professor Richard Parrish is the director of the Centre for Sports Law Research at Edge Hill University in Ormskirk. He says the Bosman case had a major impact on club football.
Bosman has quite rightly been recognised as a watershed. First of all, players' bargaining power was greatly enhanced. Monies that used to be exchanged between clubs to acquire players, the transfer fee, went into player remuneration to incentivise these players to sign for the new team, so players' wages increased. The other significant act of Bosman was that we simply saw more overseas players. We saw much greater mobility of players throughout Europe. And we've seen, to a certain extent, attempts by the governing bodies, UEFA and FIFA, to re-regulate the player market.
So presumably UEFA and FIFA aren't very happy with the European Court for interfering with what they regard as their profits.
Well, that's right. Their view of Bosman was that it was particularly damaging for football.